What's up, Wanna Coffee fam? It's Kai, and we are back. We will have weekly contributions from strangers all over the world discussing various topics chosen by yours truly. And this is the first time these contributors have spoken to one another, so you are in for a real treat. Without further ado, here's Alex and Ethan with The Glorification of Savage.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ethan, and I am here with
Alexandra.
And we are going to be talking about why everything is so savage these days. I didn't come up with this topic. I don't know if you did or they did, but it was very much from left field for me. How about you?
Actually, it was one of my topics because right before I submitted topics, I had actually seen a meme about like some of y'all out here acting so proud to be quote unquote savage, but really you're just tactless and rude. And it kind of struck a chord with me because yeah, I mean, there definitely is that part of it where people are just tactless and they're rude, and then they're like, oh, I'm just brutally honest, or I'm just savage. And it like, no, that kind of crosses a line. But then I started thinking, I'm like, you know what? I think there's a little bit of a feminist take on that term, like, savage. And it's, women like asserting themselves. I've been called aggressive a time or two when I stated my opinion. And so there's a little bit of like the let's dismantle the patriarchy kind of side to it. So I just thought it was interesting that some like the glorification of being kind and being good people. There's just this, I mean, Megan Thee Stallion has a whole song about it. I just think it's interesting.
I think you bring up an interesting point in that, like, when it comes to these sort of new terms and labels, I don't even know if they're new, but so much like the mindset of like when society views men under these terms and then women under these terms, like boys and teenagers and young men being savage. It's cool. It's like they're being like they're trying to be special and unique, but you change that lens around women being savage and it's like a derogatory term now.
Yeah. And I think I might be trying to like flip the script on that a little bit. But you're right. Guys can, be brutally honest, say whatever they want, and all of that. I do it, and I'm just a bitch.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just one more way for people to like apply a double standard term to men and women, to people in general, of like when it's convenient for them to be like, oh, you're being self-assertive, you're being like, you're standing up for yourself. No, like, you're just being a dick, being a jerk, being a savage now. I think it's just one more of those. and like, but then, I think of like younger generations and how they're trying so hard to be viral and be the next thing. And like, they're thinking of what can they do to have that moment. And like, I think of like, what's his name? I think it was Logan Paul.
Oh yeah.
Pretty like relatively like well-known social influencer on YouTube or whatnot, and the whole thing was going around pulling pranks on people, and it was like for him it was being cool and whatnot, but then they're not actually cool for the people, the victims of these pranks, because they're not people he knows. They're just like regular random people in everyday life in public that he does not get consent from, and then he does things that people would consider, oh, he's being savage, he's being funny, and he's pulling pranks on people. But it's just people being jerks and finding moments that they can be rude or offensive or insulting under this, like, oh, I'm just being so and so, fill in the blank. It's just I'm just being this. But
Yeah.
But then again, as you say, most of the time women don't get that same benefit of the doubt.
No. And like thinking, just like in general, like when I think about when I'm even thinking about parenting and like my children, first of all, I don't think my daughter is going to have any issue telling people anything.
That's great. That's great. That's great.
And part of that might, just be me, because she's the miniature version of me. But I'm like, you know what? I am just doing my best to not raise little assholes. Like there's not much in my control as to who they grow up to be, other than I can teach them to be kind. And of course, there's that side where, I have to especially teach my daughter, stand your ground, stand up for yourself. You don't have to dull down yourself to make other people comfortable. Be you, be who you are. But also don't be a jerk. Like that's the biggest thing. And I had someone ask me one day, like, would you be like super upset if your kids weren't like A+ students like you were, especially as your teacher? And I'm like, no. I said, as long as they're doing their best and assholes, I could honestly care less. And so, there's kind of that, like now, especially with social media, you have to really combat that. Just to go back to even just the title here, glorification of savage. I mean, my kids aren't on social media yet, thank God, but they will be.
It's so really early these days.
Yeah. And I'm really gonna have to like not necessarily monitor that, but have frank discussions with my kids that everything is not how appropriate humans act.
Yeah, I mean, it's so readily and widely and massively available now. I mean, you bring up points of like raising children during this time. I can imagine how difficult it would be. I mean, raising kids is hard enough as it is, but to combat, as you say, defend off the hordes of social media, of the outside influence. It's like it's not even just social influencing right now anymore. It's just the worldly influence that just coming from everywhere, from other kids with phones, from other people with phones, with like, and the internet and the TV, etc. I can't even imagine how difficult it is. You also brought up a point I wanted to ask. I don't want to offend too far off, but like, it's interesting. You said that you're gonna have these like specific conversations with your daughter in terms of like being her own person and standing her ground without veering into the realm of like being savage for savage sake, being an asshole, being a jerk, being a mean-spirited person, right?
Yeah.
And then it's interesting because growing up, you think you don't have these conversations with young boys and sons, but actually, I feel like it's that same leeway. People think that young boys and young men growing up don't need these conversations, but actually, I'm in the last couple of years of my life, I'm 35. I'm like the last 15 or so years, I'm like coming to realize boys should also have those conversations.
Oh, right? Absolutely. And to be perfectly honest, I'll be damned if my son comes it like ever, disrespects, especially women in that way. Like raised by one.
Exactly.
We're gonna have those conversations, but I think the conversation, but yeah, absolutely. And boys absolutely need those conversations, and we need to have there's no boys will be boys rhetoric. That's not okay.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I think we're starting to realize we have to have slightly different conversations for girls and boys, but they all need it, because like I'm also of the mind of like I'm so sick and tired of boys will be boys. I'm so sick and tired of like hearing about frat boys and their behavior in colleges, and like, but that's because their entire lives they've been allowed to have that behavior happen.
And like, there's just no excuses for that behavior, but that behavior is always excused. And quite simply just because they're male.
Yeah. And I think that ties into this whole thing of like being savage, right? And I think that's just a term, sort of a placeholder in general for like what we allow men and women or just people in general to behave under, like an easy to coin single word term, right? Boys will be boys, or locker room behavior, or savage, right? um yeah, it's hard to find that balance, and I can't imagine how difficult it would be. But I mean, your kids are like still pretty young, but as you say, it's like it's really really hard to predict what they're going to experience when they get older, and the other influences and outside world, and etc. Not to turn this conversation to like, oh, everything's out to get kids.
Right. Well, and like we grew up in like the rise of social media, and look how much it's changed now, and how influential it is. And even like just I see it with my students, and what is it going to be in another 15 years?
Absolutely, you're right. I mean, like, we were able to see just how insanely quickly it went from everyone barely having flip phones to now 10-year-olds having full, complete, unfettered access to the internet on
Yeah.
on phones these days aren't even phones. That phones these days are so powerful, they are just mobile computers. They really are. There isn't really much you can't do with your phone these days that you can't do when we during our age. Or like the idea of having a full-fledged desktop computer at home was amazing.
Yeah.
um
You were the rich kid if you had your own computer. Like
right, yeah, absolutely, exactly. And most families, again, like you said, lucky if a family even had one computer in order for the whole family to share, right? And everybody getting off the phone line, and like, it's just funny thinking about, like, yeah, sorry, I don't want to veer too much off the subject.
But also, did this savage culture start with us? Like, think about MySpace, and if someone made us mad, we dropped them on, and it was a big freaking deal. Like,
I think like the underlying sort of human behavior that leads into that has sort of always been there, certainly. But I actually think when it comes to things like being savage and being like, and things similar to that in that vein, I think it's more right when viral internet started really becoming a thing, right?
Yeah.
I think when viral internet has become mainstream, where everybody's trying to go viral, have that viral moment. Whereas I think for us, where like, and if anything had a viral moment, like, it was rare, and everybody knew about it. But nowadays, everybody's got a viral moment, right? And everybody's trying to cash in on it. I think it's more that. I think like now that virality is attached to money and like profit, I think that's more where it is.
Yeah. And and you see it everywhere. I probably watch too much TikTok. Like, I'm a 13-year-old adult, but I'm at a spare moment, and I'm scrolling.
You're a mom who is a high school English teacher bartending in the off time. So you do whatever you got to do to get your moment. So I get it.
But and then like some of the videos are just so nasty of like people attacking other people, and I'm like, if you don't like it, just leave it alone. Like, scroll. Like, it doesn't matter if you agree or disagree. Like, I mean, obviously, I've seen a couple that I'm like, well, you probably deserve to be taken down a notch, because like what the original video was super ignorant and horrible. And
yeah
2021, we should be beyond that, but we're not. And but at the same time, I'm like, just leave these poor people alone. Let them make their damn videos, and you don't need to mock them. Move on.
Do you think that like that whole culture of internet, like these mini communities that pop up that go back and forth at each other, be savage to each other or whatnot, like critiquing and then re-critiquing, and then it's like an endless loop of like fighting each other? I kind of feel like this harkens back to like like what's that word when you drive by a traffic accident and you can't like, and everybody slows down and everybody can't
Oh,
not look
Gaper's
at it.
delay. Is that what it's
Yeah,
called? Yeah.
I think maybe, but like, you know, you and I recognize the period of like Jerry Springer, of like everybody loving to watch Jerry Springer because of how absurd and crazy it was. And then everybody, also the age of people, we're kind of last generation of recognizing soap operas. I feel like all that entertainment of like watching the train wreck is now these situations of like YouTubers and influencers attacking each other. Like people are
Yeah.
watching specifically for the drama because they can't wait until like one influencer rips the other for like one mishap. Like they're just waiting for people to trip up.
Yeah, and then like some of them are kids. Like it's,
Yeah,
I mean, they're teenagers, but they're kids, they're children. And there's just like a disgusting part of this, like, you know, whole let's be savage culture. It's so disgusting. Like it's just like, can't you just leave people alone? Can't you just be nice? Or if you can't be like, live by the golden rule, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Like leave it alone. Like
yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's so easy with the internet because you can hide behind a question mark, like a picture, a face. Like you can say whatever you want, nobody knows. Then you go off onto your regular day. You could hurt
keyboard
someone.
courage.
Yeah, you could hurt someone so badly on the internet just from your words, and then you don't think about it at all. It's just too easy. It's just too easy. But you know, that's the whole thing of like complete freedom in America, right?
Yeah.
You're free to be nice or you're free to be savage. Yes. Consequences be damned.
Yeah, exactly. And then people are so shocked when they have consequences, like when it comes back to bite them, and they're like, oh, you know, but my favorite is when people like say the First Amendment. They're like, freedom. I'm like, yeah, you can say what you want, you can write what you want, you can do, but that's fine. But you're not free from the consequences of what you said or did. Like, and so that's what people are like, what about freedom of speech?
Yeah.
Also, what about not being an asshole? Try that. Like,
exactly. Also, like the whole, it irritates me so much anytime but somebody brings up the First Amendment, like freedom of speech. All that means is that the government has restrictions on what like they can prosecute you for, or like legally restrict you from doing that. Like the government, you know, like it's federally can't just be like you can't say what you want, but that does not mean like in your home, in your private life, in a private establishment or your private job, that they can't make rules to have consequences for when you say or do something terrible to someone.
exactly.
That's not how it works. People think it's like they think it's a complete blanket to just say and do whatever they want. I'm completely free of consequences, maybe federally, legally, but that doesn't mean like. And I love how people pretend like they didn't know, but they know. They know. They got away with it from all this time, and they're just sad that they're suddenly getting caught and having to pay for it.
Exactly. Well, our timer just went off.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, these conversations are always interesting. I never know where they veer off, but I don't want to go off too long. But Alex, it was phenomenal talking to you. Great to sort of meet you for the first time, and maybe we'll chat again about something else.
Yep, sounds good.
Great. I'm gonna pause now.
As usual, a complicated subject matter and handled gracefully by both Ethan and Alex. Thanks again, guys, for your contribution. That's it for us, folks. Catch us next week for a brand new episode with brand new contributors. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at WannaCoffeePod. That's WannaCoffeePod. I'm your host, Kai, and let's wanna coffee next week. Cheers. my God. Orange is not my new black.